Jesus said, "The Father and I are one. I am the Good Shepherd." Grace and peace to you in the name of God, loving Father, liberating Father, nourishing Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Amen. Amen. Like a bridge over troubled waters, I will lay me down. Like a bridge over troubled waters, he will lay me down. A song out of the 60s, where popular music and young people came together with scripture. Most of us didn't notice it, but it was there. And today, we live in times of troubled waters. But the deep waters are deep and can be forgiving, or they can be encouraging. We live in times of war, especially with the invasion of Ukraine. A time of pandemic, with 15 million people dead worldwide, and over 1 million people, and growing, dead in the United States. People are hungry. Children are hungry. There is violence in our public discourse, in among our institutions, among our elected officials, in private workplaces. Need I go on? You see it every day. It's in our history. It's in the book of Genesis, where at one point God makes a statement, this violence and this sin is in the earth. It is even in the very dirt. He could not understand why he did not get an invitation to the auditions for the high school senior play. Why the committee ignored him. 5 years earlier, his older brother had a leading part in the class production. After all, at 16, he was senior class president. His class voted him most likely to succeed. He had achieved academic honors all 4 years, save one, a washout year where he got into a fight. But there were troubled waters even at the high school. For the school was a consolidated school with kids from virtually 7 different towns or communities. But the committee ignored him. They did not even send him an invitation to the auditions. Even the announcements seemed to be hid from him. But after a politically correct inquiry with the principal, he received an announcement. But the announcement came just 2 days before the auditions were scheduled. He did go. He went anyway. As he entered the room for the auditions, he noticed several students all competing for the various parts. Most seemed to get the parts that they wanted, and most read very well and seemed to be familiar with the script. After an hour or so, his name was called. "Come up. Read for us in Act 2, line 22 and forward." "Ma'am, I don't have a copy of the script," he said. "I did not get one." And as only a high school English teacher could do, she looked at the 16-year-old over the top of her glasses, like this. "Then recite something for us. We need to hear your public voice." Immediately, panic set in, and a little voice within this 16-year-old asked, "Recite what?" That same voice asked, "How could you let yourself get into a situation like this?" He could only remember a line or two from the Declaration of Independence or from the preamble to the Constitution. And at 16, his memory was already fleeting. And so, without any thought, without any plan, he started to blurt out the 23rd Psalm, immediately followed by some words of Psalm 100. He had never sought to memorize either one of these. Maybe it was just imprinted in his memory imprinted by osmosis. Years of Sunday school and morning devotions, but no deliberate attempt to memorize the psalm. The recitation was loud and clear, and after stumbling over the first few words, All the confidence that a 16-year-old could muster filled the room. It was as if the words came out of the body, an out-of-body experience. The English teacher removed her glasses, sat back in her chair, and seemed to breathe a sigh of relief, all accompanied by a slight smile. This was the first time that he had ever recited the song in a large group setting, and it went over well. Not just well, it went over very well. And the leading part in the summer and spring production was his. Amidst the troubled waters and the divisions, the designations of us and them, the class play was pulled off, and it was performed. At the end, they got standing ovations for the 2 nights that it ran. This 16-year-old could say he was saved by a song or something that he did not know that he knew. I wonder, out of 150 songs in our Bible, along with the Lord's Prayer, Psalm 23 is one of the only ones that most of us can say from memory. Maybe we could include Psalm 100 and possibly a few lines from Psalm 27. But the 23rd Psalm, because it only contains comforting words, or not only contains comforting words, but it also becomes part of our manual for life's journey. But this psalm is not about Jesus. Although Jesus declares that he is the Good Shepherd, the psalm was written thousands of years before Jesus was born. It is an ancient psalm. It is like a manual for all human beings who live on this earth. Again, the psalm is not about Jesus, but it is about our relationship to God. Surely Jesus, being Jewish, knew this psalm, so occasionally he may have quoted from the psalm. The psalm tells part of the story of the ancient Hebrew people, and when we recite it, we are remembering our faith ancestors, ancient Jewish people who were our forebears for Christianity. But for us, even today, it describes our lives. They struggled for a home that they were always trying to get into, always trying to cross over into campground, a home over yonder, a home over Jordan, the home trying to get into, to hold on to, or to get back to. They struggled for peace, although they made war to do so. They struggled for food, although they forgot eventually about the hungry among their own, and the poor, and the prisoners, and the widows, and the orphans. They struggled for a future that they could believe in, denying others that same future. But these were the people of God. Like us today, we struggle. We struggle for a future, but we may deny that same future to others, marginalizing them in the process. We struggle for food, but we have so much that others among us are hungry. We struggle for self-determination and for freedom, although we select only some to join us in that struggle for survival. We struggle for truth, but only when that truth matches what we have come to believe, or what is advantageous to us, or not embarrassing to us. We ignore what challenges us, and the truth is not in us. We struggle to remain faithful to God, but too often to remain faithful means giving up privilege and power and sharing power with others. Over and over again, after Jesus' birth and during his ministry, he told us not to be afraid, not to fear. Like our Christian ancestors, though, we are afraid. So are we like sheep? Are we like sheep in need of a shepherd? We're still looking for someone to lead us to greener pastures, perhaps to goodness and mercy, even every day. But we are afraid. We are afraid because there are forces around us that we cannot control. We run like sheep down the path of what appears to be our own understanding of success, of truth, of pleasure, in pursuit of the manageable gods of money, power, control, rather than the real God. So what is behind this 23rd Psalm, this beautiful psalm? Why does it bring us comfort? The psalm, as you know, was composed by David, the imperfect child of God, a person of great sin, but loved nevertheless by God, forgiven by God. But David is like all of us. He is described by the psalm and by his ancestors as follows. David was knocked down, but picked back up, pushed out, but welcomed back in, punished for his transgressions, but forgiven and restored. He was sent away and brought back. He was laughed at and ridiculed, but he eventually became revered. Psalm 22 is really a part of the human experience that is disruptive and at the same time restorative. An experience of being afraid and losing our way, of grieving and being comforted. Just like our lives, this psalm says it all. It is part of the saving story of God who searches again and again to find his lost sheep. It is about the loving reassurance that God, in spite of ourselves, is with us and we cannot drift beyond his love and care. What again is behind Psalm 23? It is experience of being lost and found, judged and forgiven, sent away and brought back. It's all part of the swirling, disruptive experience of how we get scared and lose our way. It is part of the saving story of God who searches again and again to find us or to find his lost sheep. As humans, we are created by God in his image. We have an understanding that our consciousness and our actions are multi-tensed, which means that each of us has a past, each of us has a present tense, and each of us has a future tense. And one and other, all of these flow into each other. Our life circumstances is imposed and bracketed by time past, living with certain freedoms provided in the present, and shaping the possibilities that come for the future. This is expressed by T.S. Eliot in a series of poems called The Four Quartets. This particular one is the poem Burnt Norton, Time Past, Time Present, and Time Future. It's also expressed by St. Paul. Paul's trilogy of faith, hope, and love cannot be fixed either in the past, or in the present, or in the future. He simply says that of all of those, love is the most important. But hope can be well rooted in the past and in the future, especially when and if we remember how God has revealed himself to us. Certainly in the book of Exodus, he revealed himself as gracious, merciful, perhaps loving, slow to anger, and abounding in steadfast love. Paul and Luther probably got it right when they explained that faith is expressed practically by the word, but we're driven by works because of our faith. Love by labor and hope is expressed by patience and enduring, by opening ourselves to others. But we can be trapped by our understanding of our histories, or we can be transformed by our histories. There are forces again in our lives that we cannot control, forces that we don't see, and so we need a good shepherd, someone who will lead us, and someone who can invite us to follow. Once when I was 10 or 12 years old, my father decided it was time to teach me how to fish, that perhaps I stayed in the house too much. And so he took me fishing one Saturday morning. It was cloudy, much like today, with a mist in the air. And as we walked along this small creek or large branch, The reeds growing on the banks were much taller than me. But my father was able to look ahead over the reeds and then turn and look back over the ground that we have covered. And that's much like what a shepherd does. The 23rd Psalm, when told over and over again, helps us to understand our seasons of life. The psalm provides for us a bridge over the troubled waters of life. It is a roadmap for life, describing the valleys and the mountains, and all of those things that influence us. Almost all of us come to the point where the psalm reminds us of God's love, God's grace, and God's mercy. A bridge, again, over troubled waters. A bridge to the other side of the swirling waters. A place of still waters, giving us a blessed assurance that we so desperately need. A place where God's grace will give us haven. A place of still waters, in a place where we know we are loved and where we are forgiven. And a place where thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. I shall fear no evil, for thou art with me. And if there's a lesson for us today, we should remember that God has said over and over again, I am with you, even to the end of the ages. Amen.
Amen.